Right now, as you watch this video, you are living through stage one of a currency collapse. This isn't a prediction of doom, but a stark observation of historical patterns. The terrifying truth about stage one is that it feels completely normal, even prosperous. This initial phase is insidious because it masks deep systemic vulnerabilities. It's a period where the seeds of future economic turmoil are sown, yet daily life continues largely undisturbed. Understanding this stage is crucial for navigating the economic landscape ahead. Stage one is when a nation, empire, or economy begins borrowing far beyond its ability to repay through normal economic growth. This isn't just about accumulating debt, it's about a fundamental shift in economic philosophy. The dangerous part is that it doesn't feel dangerous at all. In fact, it often feels wonderful, like an era of unprecedented growth and opportunity. The debt funds visible prosperity, better roads, stronger military, generous social programs, and rising asset prices. Citizens immediately see and feel the benefits of this spending. The true costs, however, are deferred, pushed into the future, making them easy to ignore in the present. This period is characterized by a collective delusion that this time is different. We convince ourselves that the old rules of economics no longer apply to our unique situation. Previous generations would have considered current levels of debt insane, yet they are now normalized. This normalization is a key indicator of stage one. Crucially, stage one marks the slow, almost invisible transition from productive debt to survival debt. Productive debt fuels growth and innovation, generating future returns. Survival debt, however, is used merely to maintain the status quo, pay existing obligations, or stimulate consumption without creating lasting value. This shift is a silent alarm bell. Let's start with Rome, because it offers a clear, ancient example of stage one debt accumulation. In 180 AD, when Emperor Marcus Aurelius died, Rome controlled the known world, an empire of immense power and wealth. Yet, maintaining such an expansive empire was incredibly expensive. Visual map of Roman Empire at maximum extent. The Roman military, essential for defense and expansion, consumed an ever-increasing portion of the imperial budget. Soldiers needed salaries, forts required constant supplies, and maintaining peace often involved bribing potential enemies. Tax revenue, however, wasn't growing fast enough to cover these escalating costs. This created a fiscal dilemma for the emperors. Visual charts showing Roman military spending over time. The Roman military consumed up to 80% of the imperial budget by the 3rd century. Faced with this shortfall, Rome resorted to a seemingly logical solution. They borrowed from the future by debasing their currency. This was a subtle, yet profound, economic manipulation. Visual side-by-side comparison of Roman denarius coins. The denarius, Rome's primary silver coin, started at 95% silver under Augustus. By 180 AD, it had fallen to 79% silver, a noticeable but not catastrophic reduction. By 260 AD, it was barely 5% silver, mostly bronze with a thin silver coating. Each debasement allowed the government to mint more coins from the same amount of silver, effectively increasing the money supply. Visual charts showing denarius silver content decline. But here's the critical part for understanding stage one. This debasement happened slowly, almost imperceptibly. A Roman citizen in 180 AD wouldn't immediately notice the change. The coins looked similar, they still spent the same in the forum, and soldiers continued to receive their pay. Life appeared to be good, maintaining an illusion of stability. That's stage one in action. The debt was accumulating, not just through direct borrowing, but through the hidden tax of debasement. Promises were being made to future generations that the current generation couldn't truly afford. It was invisible, silent, and comfortable for a time. Roman citizens in 180 AD had no idea they were in stage one of a currency collapse that would devastate the empire within 100 years. They genuinely believed they were living in permanent prosperity. Sound familiar? Let's jump forward to Germany in 1914, another powerful nation on the cusp of economic upheaval. If you had asked a German citizen in July 1914 if their currency would collapse within a decade, they would have laughed at you. The German mark was one of the world's most respected currencies, a symbol of national strength. Germany was an industrial powerhouse, and Berlin rivaled London and Paris in culture and wealth. Visual: pre-World War I Germany, peaceful street scenes, prosperity. Then came World War I, a conflict that would fundamentally alter the global economic order. The war cost Germany approximately 164 billion marks, a sum so vast it was almost incomprehensible at the time. Crucially for our Stage 1 analysis, Germany didn't raise taxes significantly to pay for the war. Instead, they borrowed heavily, both domestically and internationally. Visual: World War I battle scenes, soldiers, trenches. The government's logic seemed sound, if ultimately flawed. We'll win the war, force the losers to pay reparations, and cover our debts that way. This optimistic, yet fiscally irresponsible, approach set the stage for future problems. Unfortunately for Germany, they didn't win the war. Visual: Treaty of Versailles signing. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 imposed crushing terms, demanding Germany pay 132 billion gold marks in reparations. This was on top of their already massive war debt, creating an impossible financial burden. The nation was trapped in a cycle of debt that seemed insurmountable. Visual: Chart showing German debt accumulation. Now, here's where it gets interesting for our Stage 1 analysis. Between 1914 and 1921, most German citizens still felt relatively stable. Yes, there was inflation and prices were rising, but it was a gradual increase. Germans still went to work, shops were still open, and the currency still functioned, albeit with diminishing purchasing power. This period, from 1914 to 1921, represents the critical window of Stage 1 for Weimar Germany. The nation was accumulating impossible debt levels, yet daily life continued more or less normally. Citizens could see prices rising slowly, but it hadn't reached crisis levels yet. The full impact of the debt was not yet apparent in their daily lives. In 1921, you could still buy a loaf of bread for a reasonable price. The system was strained but not broken. By late 1923, however, you'd need a wheelbarrow full of marks for the same loaf. But in 1921, that was Stage 1. Debt was accumulating. The system was still functioning, and citizens still believed things would eventually work out. The invisible transition from manageable debt to impossible debt happened during this deceptive calm. Now let's talk about right now. About you. About the world you're living in. The Roman citizen in 180 AD still went to the bathhouse, enjoying the amenities of a powerful empire. The German citizen in 1919 still took the train to work, navigating a world recovering from war, but not yet in full economic collapse. You, too, are still living your normal life in 2024, perhaps enjoying modern conveniences and opportunities. Visual: Modern America, cities, commerce, normal life. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, the debt is accumulating. Massively, invisibly, inexorably. This isn't just about government spending. It's about a broader economic environment where debt has become the primary engine of growth and stability. The scale of this accumulation is unprecedented in modern history. Visual: Current U.S. debt clock or visualization. Consider these current U.S. debt metrics. Federal debt now exceeds $35 trillion, a staggering sum that continues to grow daily. The debt-to-GDP ratio is over 125%, indicating that the national debt far outstrips the country's annual economic output. Interest payments are approaching $1 trillion annually, a significant portion of the federal budget that could otherwise be used for productive investments. Furthermore, unfunded liabilities, such as Social Security and Medicare, are estimated to be over $100 trillion, representing promises made without sufficient funding mechanisms. Here's the historical pattern. Stage 1 always feels safe. It's designed to feel safe, to lull populations into a sense of security. That's precisely what makes it so dangerous. The debt accumulates during seemingly good times, when politicians promise more benefits and services. It thrives when interest rates are low, making borrowing seem cheap and consequence-free. It accelerates when citizens demand services they aren't willing to pay for through direct taxation. We are currently in Stage 1. The question isn't whether we fit the historical pattern. History makes that abundantly clear. The critical question is, What comes next, and how will we respond? So how do you recognize stage 1 while you're living in it? It's not always obvious, but there are clear markers if you know what to look for. These indicators often appear as positive developments, further contributing to the deceptive calm. Visual, modern everyday scenes, people shopping, working, living normally. 1. Everything feels normal, even good. Asset prices are rising across the board, real estate, stocks, and even speculative assets like cryptocurrency. This feels like genuine prosperity, a sign of a booming economy. However, it's often just inflation of the money supply masking as true wealth creation. The rising tide lifts all boats, but the tide itself is artificially inflated. 2. Debt is normalized to an astonishing degree. Your parents might have thought a $200,000 mortgage was an enormous burden, a significant commitment. Now, multi-million-dollar mortgages are common in many areas, and the average home price has soared. Your grandparents might have considered government deficits of $100 billion reckless and unsustainable. Today, we routinely run trillion-dollar deficits and barely notice, accepting them as the new normal. 3. Low interest rates make debt feel free, almost like a gift. When you can borrow at 3%, 2%, or even 1%, debt seems like a negligible burden, not a significant financial obligation. This encourages more borrowing by individuals, corporations, and governments alike. However, persistently low rates are often a sign that the system needs artificial support to survive, indicating underlying economic weakness rather than strength. Visual, charts showing historical U.S. interest rates. Observe the federal funds rate from 1960 to 2024. You'll see the dramatic decline from the 1980s peaks of over 15% to near zero levels in the 2010s and early 2020s. Even with recent increases, current rates remain historically low, reflecting an ongoing reliance on cheap money. This environment fosters a false sense of security regarding debt. 4. Politicians promise you can have everything without sacrifice. More benefits, lower taxes, stronger defense, better infrastructure, all without any pain or difficult choices. This political rhetoric is only possible through continuous debt accumulation. It's the promise of a free lunch funded by future generations, which is a hallmark of stage 1. 5. Anyone who warns about the accumulating debt is dismissed as a pessimist or an alarmist. You'll hear phrases like, "We've always had debt, debt doesn't matter anymore," or "This time is different." These dismissive statements appear in every stage 1 throughout history, serving to silence dissent and maintain the illusion of stability. If these markers sound familiar, it's because you're living through them right now. Let me be absolutely clear about something. I'm not predicting the future with certainty. I'm not telling you precisely what will happen or when. My purpose is different. I'm showing you what has happened, repeatedly, throughout history, when societies follow this economic path. This is not fear-mongering, it is pattern recognition. It's about understanding the cyclical nature of economic events and the predictable consequences of certain policy choices. This channel exists to give you the historical knowledge to recognize where we are in this cycle, not to scare you into panic, and certainly not to sell you a specific product or investment. My goal is simply to illuminate the pattern, to provide context for the economic realities we face. Because once you see stage 1 for what it truly is, a period of deceptive calm and accumulating risk, you can begin to prepare for stage 2. Stage 2 is when confidence begins to crack, when the whispers of concern grow louder, and when smart money quietly starts heading for the exits, even as the party still rages for others. Don't be caught unaware by the next phase of this economic cycle. Subscribe to this channel now to gain the insights and historical perspective you need to understand the unfolding pattern. Share this video with others who need to see beyond the illusion of endless prosperity. Your informed awareness is your greatest asset in these uncertain times.